All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corey Bachhaus. I am the Talent Community Manager for Engineering Connect and Cyber Connect. And I want to welcome everyone to today's live Tech Talk, How to Get a Job in the Cyber World. This is a presentation, a collaboration between Lockheed Martin, Rotary and Mission Systems, Cyber Connect, and Engineering Connect. So I'd like to welcome our presenter today, a software engineer from Lockheed, Rotary and Mission Systems, Mr. Daniel Seeman. So thank you for joining us, Daniel. Just a quick background on Daniel. He has been with Lockheed Martin since 2008, graduated from the University of Florida in 2009 with a bachelor's in computer science from the College of Engineering, and then he actually returned in 2012 to the University of Florida to get his master's in engineering management. He's also been in the cybersecurity industry since 2010 as part of the National Cybersecurity Range program at Lockheed Martin. He also assists in various cyber events, and as manager, he works on interviewing and hiring new employees with a special focus on interns and college hires, all with an ear towards recruiting cyber talent. So thank you for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you for letting me. Hi, everyone.
Yeah. So just a real quick housekeeping items before we get started. This is an interactive talk, so on your Skype chat bar there, if you'd like to ask a question during the chat, please feel free to type in there and put the question, and we will try to answer as many as we can throughout the talk. And finally, a version of today's Tech Talk is being recorded and will be available to view within the talent communities in the coming weeks. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Daniel. Thanks again, Daniel.
Gladly. Hello, everyone. I know you can't reply directly, but feel free to type in the chat if you have any questions or comments. I'll try to stop every couple slides to read through those things and reply. Welcome, Cyber Tech Talk. That was a great introduction. How to get a job in the cyber world. As he just mentioned, I look at a lot of resumes. Some people's resumes stand out because they have amazing internships. Some people's resumes stand out because they have a really high GPA from a prestigious university. But the things that really get to me in the cyber realm is a few particular items that show that you have an understanding of what cyber really means. I personally feel that schools are not teaching this well enough in terms of what you may be doing in the cyber realm because it is such a new field. And I'm going to talk to you all about what I'm looking for when I'm looking at resumes and how to get a job in the cyber world using some things that you can do at home. Think of it like a bottle rocket that you can make at home using Mentos and Diet Coke. This is the equivalent for cybersecurity. I'm going to teach you some things that will help you learn and grow as an incoming engineer. CS, computer science, focuses on programming. You've probably learned that in school if you went into any of the related fields. Computer science generally focuses on things like Java. Again, great language, but not necessarily what we're going to talk about going forward. Java, C++, C#, all of these languages will create an output that you're going to be running as a standalone or inside of, say, the JVM. It compiles the code. It focuses on a lot of object-oriented and design patterns type structures. And generally, in professional organizations like my own, the code is then scrutinized and reviewed by many committees. We do things that are called peer reviews to make sure that the code works. And we go through a lot of different processes, such as Agile, to make sure that the code continues to work and iterate through. When you're writing code in the computer science realm, you know exactly what it's supposed to do. You say, I'm writing Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word, and the intention of Microsoft Word is to help you type up a document. You know that going in. You know what your requirements look like, and you build a product, and then you give it to someone, and they either buy it or they don't. Most of the time, these are standalone executables. The other CS, cybersecurity, is a little different in both its aims and its methods. It's really about problem solving. Of course, there is programming in cybersecurity. But you may have heard about things like script kiddies who are doing cybersecurity work without a formal computer science background because they're using their scripts to solve problems. A lot of the languages that we use in cybersecurity are just-in-time languages or script languages such as Python. Python's great because it lets you take the code, make some small adjustments, and rerun it to try to accomplish your need with the programming. Likewise, because we're so keen on changing the code as we go, we often keep the code a little bit generic, bring it with us, and then tweak it for specific scenarios. If you have a Python script that you really like, you take it with you, and then you can run it on whatever system you happen to be on, changing some results based on the kind of system you've hit. Instead of having a single program, an exe, a jar file, we generally have a series of scripts. Instead of having formalized peer reviews, we iterate and test so that our scripts get better and better as time goes on, and so that they can handle a larger range of scenarios. Again, if anyone has any questions, let me know in the chat. I will reply. So, the point of this presentation. Cybersecurity is as much about IT work as it is about computer science. IT, in many schools, is seen as an entirely different degree. The way that people use cybersecurity means that these should be a lot more closely linked. There's a lot of things you can do or have already done in your spare time which would help to contribute to a career in cybersecurity. I've seen people give me a pretty standard bog normal resume without anything other than some Java work, for example. But then when I ask them about the things they do in their spare time, they have a lot of work that actually turned out to be very relevant to the field. I had a guy tell me about his Minecraft server for half an hour, and he ended up with a job offer because the things that he was doing to have this fun, some would consider time waster activity, involved all the scenarios that we would need to worry about in the cybersecurity realm. Anyway, here's some things that I was thinking about that would help with a career. LAN parties. This is where you bring a computer over to a common space or a friend's house, plug it in, connect all your computers to each other, and play Quake with each other. LAN parties were very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s because internet-connected games were not as common back then. LAN parties involved a lot of different IT and cybersecurity ideas. You had to connect your computer into hubs and switches to get them to talk to each other. You had to set your own IP addresses and handle your own subnetting because DHCP wasn't really integrated into switches back then. And you had to have an understanding of the hardware so you'd know when things were not going right. Accidentally downloading a virus. This also came up in an interview I did once. Someone told me about the virus they downloaded and how that got them into the field. If you've ever downloaded a virus, hopefully by accident, hopefully you weren't trying to infect somebody else with it, understanding what that virus is doing to your system is a very important thing. If the virus gets onto your system and it tries to restart the computer right away, how do you get around that problem? That's the kind of thing that you'd run into in the cybersecurity realm. What happens when computers restart? What's the process? What are the init levels inside of Linux? These are the sorts of things that we need to know in cybersecurity because we are concerned about protecting and sometimes attacking computers. When you accidentally download a virus, you should probably know how to get rid of that virus and see what sort of things are lingering on your computer afterwards. You might go looking through your registry. You might go looking through the processes that are running in Task Manager. Again, those sound like IT sorts of things, but they're also involved in a huge overlap with cybersecurity. Here's one, laziness. I go on vacation, rarely, and I take a lot of photos. But not all those photos should be sent to get physical copies. But if I know I do want some physical copies and I don't want to look through all the photos, using scripting languages to do quick tasks has a huge overlap with cybersecurity. If you were to say, I have 1,000 photos in a directory, you could jump into Python and give yourself an archive of a third of those files in about 2 minutes of scripting. It's that sort of quick thinking that is very much involved with the penetration testing type activities you see in cybersecurity. My point with this exercise is to think of some things that you do in your day-to-day which involve not a computer science background, which is much more formalized and the sorts of things you'd see in a classroom, but which involve the IT sphere or the normal convenience that you do every day, and figure out how that maps to cybersecurity. Those are the sorts of things that we're looking for in the realm. People that really understand computers from end to end and can thus take care of the complex problems. Here's one that I think is fun, by the way. This is from the book Masters of Doom. Playing Doom 1 on a college campus was a cybersecurity problem. The first version of the Doom network code transmitted all of its data as broadcast data. Any other machine on the network that had Doom playing was brought down because there was so much data flowing over the space. Many campuses forbid students from playing Doom because teachers were not able to access their tests, they were not able to put in grades. Everything was taken down because people were playing Doom, and Doom was terribly optimized for networks. But again, at the time, Doom pioneered that space. If they had a little bit more knowledge about what that would do to the network space, they probably would have done it otherwise. But that's cybersecurity for you. A lot of cause and effect and a lot of trial and error. Whoops. By the way, I'm going to presume that people can see me going through this presentation because no one said otherwise. If you have any questions, let me know. Cybersecurity, and this is where I've been going, is a very, very young field. All the people in cybersecurity, and they're not all young people certainly, I mean young as in new, all the people in cybersecurity are using computers to solve unusual problems in unusual ways. There's a little bit more similarity to, say, MacGyver than a lot of us would like to admit. We're taking whatever we can and we're solving problems using whatever works. If you can prove that ingenuity to us, it will really help you stand out to people. The best employees here have eclectic mixes of skills, and they're really interested in problem solving. If you're the kind of person that wakes up and says, I want to go read 20 computer programming language books, that's great, but that's a little more computer science. But if you're interested in doing tech support and figuring out how to solve problems and then how to automate those solutions and figure out how to encapsulate those solutions in repeatable ways, that's cybersecurity. Let's talk about cybersecurity and what that means for a bit. I'm going to jump right in from here into talking about things that you can do to help impress us when it comes time to apply. Cybersecurity is, yes, about attack and defense. Red's more fun, so let's talk about blue first. The blue teams are defenders. Doesn't matter if you're the good guy or the bad guy, blue means defense. Blue team members utilize tools and procedures to take care of systems and prevent things from getting in from the outside world. You're expected to know about network security, including firewalls and proxies and antiviruses, all the sorts of things to protect your network or your network stack or your localized network, etc., from attack. Local security includes things like group policy, endpoint, and access control lists. These are the things that prevent people that are on your computer from doing things they should not be doing. All of these protections always reside on your box. If you're in a large corporation, you might have McAfee running on your computer right now, preventing you from changing certain settings. This is the same as a computer you'd see at, say, a mall, so you can't jump out of a store kiosk and go and play video games on that same computer. That's local security preventing you from using the computer the way you'd want to. It might frustrate you as a user, but it also frustrates attackers. Blue team members are also expected to understand network configuration. These days, we have switches and routers in our houses that take care of this for us. If you have a normal Linksys or D-Links router at your house, you've either plugged your computer in or just used the wireless to get an IP address. In the cybersecurity realm, we can't rely on that, both because a lot of networks in the real world don't have that automated, and because you might be playing with somebody else's system that hasn't set that up. Network configuration includes how things come in and out of your network, including your IP addresses, network segments, and routers. If you understand how the data gets around, you can both protect and corrupt that pattern. Probably the most important things that blue teams do is analysis. This is similar to, say, digital fingerprinting, forensics, etc. Seeing what happened on a system after it happened, or while it's happening, even better, helps you prevent the attacks that are coming in. There are suites like Security Onion that help you see what you've missed in semi-real time. I'm going to talk about a couple of these suites in a little bit that'll help you learn how to do these things at home. It's also worth learning about the red teams. Of course, red teams are the attackers, the penetration testers, the hackers, the fun ones, the Mr. Robots of the world. All the fun is on the red team. And I say fun because those are the things that are glamorous, not because it's actually fun to hack systems. It can be stressful at times. Either way, if you learn about cybersecurity, you should understand both the blue and the red sides. Scanning tools is a big part of the red team. They help you find the vulnerabilities. Not every hacker is doing all the legwork themselves, similar to a detective using a phone book instead of trying to cold call numbers. Nmap, Nessus, and OpenVAS are just some scanning tools that can help you find out a weakness in a system. Red teams then, of course, use penetration tools to attempt to penetrate the system. These include Metasploit and other Kali Linux tools. A lot of people consider the red teams bad guys, but that's not necessarily true. There are a lot of hackers out there who do their penetration work in an effort to defend. Facebook, for example, hires a lot of penetration testers to try to attack Facebook, to see the ways that Facebook would be infiltrated by outside forces. They just hire those people internally to make sure that they find those vulnerabilities before somebody else does. So, Let's drill down into some of those things that we expect or would love people to know before they come into the cybersecurity realm. Blue and red both have classes at universities that relate to their fields. They're just generally not collected in the same way. You see a lot of IT work under blue. The red team is generally considered a cybersecurity type class or a cybersecurity type track. But cybersecurity jobs require you to know a little of both. Anyway, if you are applying for a job in cybersecurity, here's what I'd love you to know. For network security, I'd love you to understand differences between firewalls, proxies, and antivirus. The analogy I like is right there. Firewalls are the lock on your door. They either let the packet in or they don't. Do you have the key? Then you can come in. Firewalls are looking at things like ports and protocols. If you're coming in on port 25, I either will let you in or not, depending on if I allow email into my system. Proxies are more like bouncers at a club. The proxy looks at what's actually trying to come in. It doesn't just look at the type of data. It doesn't just see if your email data. And in this case, that means headed toward port 25, headed toward port 443. Proxies are looking at the content of the data. The most popular or famous types of proxies would be, say, the net nanny suites. This prevents adult content from getting into a system, the sort of thing you'd see at an elementary school to stop elementary school students from going to places they're not supposed to. That's because the proxy is there looking at the data. It looks to see if the data that the child is trying to get to is considered adult or banned content. Again, there is some overlap with a firewall, but it's a lot more specific and has to be used in different ways. Everyone likely has experience with antivirus. That's more of a bomb-sniffing dog. Just like the dog, the antivirus knows what it's looking for, but that actually means the content has to exist somewhere for it to look at. This is different than a proxy where it's going to scan the content and try to figure out what's inside of it. The antivirus is looking for signatures. You have to train the dog on what a bomb smells like, and an antivirus has to understand what a virus is when it looks for it. You may also have heard of heuristics, where an antivirus can try to figure out the patterns something's doing to try to see if it resembles a different virus. That's also true. Antivirus will take care of things at your endpoint and look to see if the file or process you've already downloaded is dangerous. If you want to test this at home, there are free versions of these tools available. The iCar test virus is just a text file that will register itself as a virus. You can use this to test your understanding of antivirus and malware protection. For example, the iCar text virus, as I mentioned, is just a text string. If you email that to somebody and their computer does not stop that from happening and it's sitting in their email box and they put it on their desktop and they double click on it and nothing bad happens, that means you've sent them a virus and their virus scanner ignored it because it was from an email. Can you send that to someone in an instant message? Can you send that to someone through a website? All those things should be caught by your antivirus. What if you put it inside of a zip file or a tar file? If that's trapped, what if you put it inside an encrypted tar file? What about a self-decrypting file? You can use the iCar test virus to play with a virus in the same way you would a real virus, and it should be detected in the exact same way a real virus would by an antivirus program. That's why it's used, and that's why it was created, so people can play with the capability. Want to play with an antivirus? Windows systems have Windows Defender available for free. Despite it being free and despite it being on all Windows 8 and above systems, it's actually surprisingly good. It's rated very well compared to a lot of others. Avast is rated a bit higher, which also has free versions. But Defender will never bug you about upgrading because there is no upgraded version. I recommend you turn on Windows Defender if you don't have an antivirus currently. Squid. I see a question in the chat asking if we are able to hear somebody, and the answer is no. I cannot hear anybody speaking but myself. That's a little lonely, but it's probably okay. We are currently on the blue slide right now. Squid is a proxy. It is a free proxy that you can download and place onto your personal network. You can route data through Squid, write your own rules, and see how data is or is not stopped using the Squid proxy program. Likewise, IP tables is a free firewall built into Linux systems. Using IP tables, you can define rules in the exact same way as a multi-$1,000 Cisco firewall. IP tables can determine the port of the data coming in and then what you should do with that data. You can say, if I see data from port 25, throw it away. Or, if I see data on port 25, redirect it somewhere else. Using these tools, you can, for free, play with a lot of the same network security tools that a real cybersecurity engineer would. Local security is a bit harder. Group policy is part of the Active Directory suite. It is a standard in most industries for how to protect Windows systems. However, most people are not on Active Directories in their own homes because you would need a Windows server to set that up. However, if you have a professional version of Windows, you have a localized version of group policy under GPEdit. You can set all the exact same things you would using an Active Directory, also known as a domain, to try local security at home. Playing with local security is a way that real blue teams defend the networks. And by using that, you can find out how a blue team would do their defenses and how you can attack your own system to try out your security. You should also understand where endpoint security is helpful and when it's not. As I mentioned, the endpoint, being your computer, has security methods such as the antivirus. If the attack has already gotten to your computer, it might be too late. There are times when endpoint security is helpful, like I said, viruses, but endpoint security is not going to be able to stop a DDoS. If a million people are trying to contact your system at the same time, you need to stop that before it gets to your computer, because the simple act of taking those packets in and having them scanned will bog down your server already. Understand where endpoint is and is not available. Access control, which is more applicable in Linux systems generally, protects you from programs and people going where they should not. Access control lets you set things such as read and write permission on your files. 777 is the global standard for read, write, and execute whoever and however you want on a file. If you're playing with your own computer and trying to program something, it's easy and tempting to do it, but it's not necessarily smart. If you're trying to understand local security, figure out how that access control affects your local usage of your box. Similarly, understand UAC and sudo permissions. That is to say, understand the difference between running as an administrator and running as a common user. Blue 2, network configuration. The networking field is a class all by itself. And when I took networking in college, it explained things in much too high a level. And I don't mean the high levels of IP addressing. I mean that it explained things as if it was a curiosity, not something that we play with all the time. Just because your router at home might set your network settings for you, doesn't mean that that field isn't something that you would have to understand as a cybersecurity engineer. You own your own router or use your school's Wi-Fi, so you don't have to worry about your own. But by setting up a network in your own space, generally with a virtual machine, you can understand how data travels around. Understand how you can access certain things and what prevents that access so that you can play with that in the future. If you were someone who understood the difference between a router, a hub, and a switch, you would already be leaps and bounds above most incoming engineers and college graduates and current engineers, to be honest, because that's so well taken care of these days, people no longer need to know that. Routers move data around a system. Hubs duplicate data to anyone connected to it. And switches move data between people plugged into different ports. If you know networking, you know how simplified that explanation was, but I'd like to think it's a good primer. If you are a networking engineer, you've been doing this sort of thing for years. But as I said before, cybersecurity has a little bit of every field, so it's good understanding these things. Do you want to play with this at home? Viata and the offshoot version Vios, V-Y-O-S, are great and free tools to understand networking at home. You don't need to go and buy Cisco products. Even though they're world standard, you don't need to purchase those to understand how networking works on your own time. Viata and Vios will let you play with those things at home. Likewise, it has a firewall on there with IP tables, so you can try the firewall tools from before. The logs on your computer. If you're in Windows, we have Event Viewer, and if you're in Linux, we have syslog. The logs on your computer can tell you a lot about the things that have been going on. Again, that sounds obvious. The logs better be able to tell you what happened. But most people don't know how many logs are on their computer and where they need to go inside of those logs to find the interesting information. Likewise, aside from logs that reside there, your network has been transmitting a million things about your computer and about other computers that you may not have realized. If you look at your network traffic, you can find out about the things going on your network that is not specifically advertised to you, just based on the fact that network flows around the switches in your network, but multiple people may be able to grab it. We hear all sorts of things like, war driving and people going near your house and joining your Wi-Fi network and printing silly things on your printer. If you understand how the network traffic works, you can understand why and how to protect your system. Here are some good free tools for this: Security Onion and Cacti. Security Onion is an all-in-one Linux installation tool, just like Viata from before, that has Linux along with a lot of analysis tools. And again, it's free. It comes with free versions of multiple signatures for intrusion detection systems, such as Suricata and Snort, that can help you see what sort of intrusions may have occurred or will occur on your network. So you set up a security onion and you try to hack yourself, and you see how those hacks would have been noticed by an attentive system engineer. If you're paying attention to the things going on in your system, you may not be able to prevent the first hack, but if you watched and noticed it, you can easily prevent that exact hack from happening a second time by closing the avenue that they took to get in. Cacti is another such system. Cacti will take in logs and data from multiple systems and correlate it in a nice, colorful, well-graphed way. Both these tools are free, and both these tools can be put on your home network without much difficulty. There are a lot of tutorials for both these things too. Really, anyone using Linux has a huge support base online because people using Linux love to make other people use Linux. So that's helpful. Red. Again, this is the fun stuff. 2 parts to the red team: scanning and penetration. It's very helpful to understand what a CVE is. There is a database of cyber attacks and penetration methods out there that enemy and personal combatants use to say, here are ways that we will attack a system. But even more impressive is that there's a CVE database of vulnerabilities out there. For instance, there might be a CVE that says, Office 2013 can easily be hacked by pressing these 2 buttons. And the CVEs will explain where the weaknesses are, and if you interpret it right, how you can take advantage of it yourself. All these CVEs are freely published once they're known to the world. Obviously, someone may keep an exploit close to their chest, but once they're known, anyone can read them. You need to understand what's important about the CVE data. If you realize that there's something in your system that has a vulnerability, you should probably patch that hole. Or you should keep that hole open and see what you can do by attacking yourself. This is why it's always important to patch your system with newer patches or to get new versions of software that's not supported anymore. For instance, if you're using Office 97 still, you might want to consider upgrading. Here's a story I like to tell. I believe it was the tail end of 2017, we found a bug, or a vulnerability, I should say, in CPUs called Spectre, and another one called Meltdown. These are 2 vulnerabilities that existed inside of CPUs that could, potentially, allow people to find out data they're not supposed to find out. Plugging this hole would require the 2 big CPU companies, Intel and AMD, to slow down their processors. But it was something that needed to be done because the danger of these vulnerabilities was very high. They instantly went into the CVE database so people understood what it was that could be attacked. Microsoft immediately published a patch so that anyone using Windows would not be able to be attacked in such a way. But here's the fun part. Windows thought it was such a big deal that they patched it immediately and then broke 10% of computers with the patch they put out. Now that patch actually got out there, and for people that were affected by that unusual 10% bug, if they happen to have the configuration that Microsoft didn't test well enough against, they couldn't log into their own computers. In avoiding one vulnerability, Microsoft almost exploited another one. They taught people how to remove that patch, and then they removed that patch from their store, uploading a corrected one in a couple days. But what happened to that patch? Understanding something about CVEs could tell you something interesting. Microsoft intentionally put out a patch that said, I am a real patch. I am from Microsoft. If you had that patch that is a real patch by a real company, Microsoft, but that broke 10% of computers, you'd actually have a pretty powerful weapon. And an understanding of CVEs and vulnerabilities and patches could help you get toward that tool. As a red team member, as a penetration tester, as a hacker, whatever you'd like to call it, that knowledge is absolutely powerful. Do you want to find out what's wrong with your network? Do you want to find out what's wrong with your computer? There are tools like Nessus that you can use to analyze yourself. Of all the tools that I've mentioned, by the way, Nessus is the least free of them. There are free trial versions of it that can do limited scanning in limited spaces. You can go get Nessus and analyze your own computer pretty easily, but you cannot use Nessus to analyze an entire, say, company or real places like Google for free. You'd have to buy a paid version of Nessus, which, compared to many other tools, is not that expensive, but I digress. You can use Nessus to do vulnerability scanning in the same way an actual penetration tester would. Use it to analyze your own computer, and it will tell you what CVEs, vulnerabilities, you're breaking on your computer, or which are available on your own computer. It's a helpful way to know which patches you should have applied and you haven't gotten around to doing so yet. Penetration. That's the fun topic, which is why I'm going to skip over it entirely. I'm absolutely sure everyone in this talk has heard of hacking. If not, try watching any late-night crime show for a couple minutes because it's going to be the boogeyman eventually. Kali Linux, another free Linux suite, contains almost everything you need to try out penetration testing. And I'm going to make this point, which might seem obvious. Please always consider the legality of the situation. Do you want to hack your own system? Go for it. If you're at a university, though, please don't hack a system owned by the university. Please don't go and try to hack a bank or even scan the bank using something like Nessus to find out what's vulnerable. There are all kinds of laws and protections that say you're not supposed to attack things, even just for fun, because that can be considered an attack and is using up bank resources or university resources. If you're going to play as a penetration tester in your own time, use your own tools in your own environment. Don't end your career early by getting flagged as somebody who's willing to take advantage of somebody else's assets. That said, set up 2 Kali Linuxes, a Nessus, and a security onion, and you can have 2 computers attack each other while analyzing what's going on in the network. You can use that to see what happens when someone's really attacking. We have blue and red. Being the patriotic country we are, of course we have white. The white team controls the environment. If the red team is the attacker and the blue team is the defender, somebody had to set up the space for them to run around in. The white team is not the race car driver or the race car. They're the pit crew and the people that built the stadium. The referees, the moderators, or, to use another reference, the dungeon master, somebody who sets the scenario. Most people are involved in white teams when they talk about capture the flag events. A lot of universities either run or participate in or moderate capture the flags. In a capture the flag event, a white team will set up an environment working alongside a blue team to set up some defenses. And then red teams will try to break through those defenses to try to find flags on the other end. White teams are absolutely necessary in the cyberspace as well. It's worth learning about. I know it's not the one that's the most famous or glamorous of the 3, but the white space is the one that's one of the most important when it comes to cybersecurity in our country. People need to set up environments and need to understand, analyze, and engineer how things happen in that environment so we can reproduce them later. If you have never done a CTF, there are free CTFs that you can join online and test your skills. Or there's instructions on how to set one up so you can do it in your own space. It's fun. In summary, and I'll be very blunt, if I saw these things on your resume, I would ask you about them. And if you said you had a good understanding of them, I would be much more interested in you because it meant you were using tools that actual cybersecurity professionals use. Try out the big 3 Linux tool suites. Viata is the networking suite. It contains firewall information, routing information, and an installation of Python so that you can do scripting and you can see how scripting works alongside networking. If you don't understand how networks work, using Viata or Vias to set up a local router and have it connect to other routers helps you move data around your network. Security Onion is the second Linux suite. Security Onion has the visualization and analysis suites. Use Wireshark to find out what's going on your network and see how packets move around and what's inside of them. Use ELSA and Security Miner to see what things already happen on your network. If you have a Security Onion set up inside your network and you're using instant messaging tools like Skype or ICQ or I'd say AOL Instant Messenger if this was 3 years ago, Security Onion allows you to actually pull the conversations out of those transmissions so that you can read them all on the Security Onion terminal. This is why encryption is so important. Kali is the third one, Kali Linux. Like I said before, it lets you analyze and penetrate a network. It comes with a lot of penetration tools, and there's additional analysis tools you can get, such as OpenVOS, which help you analyze networks. If you want to try the industry standard, you can download and play with Nessus for a little bit, but you will have to pay for that one eventually. I hope you noticed that all three of those were Linux. If this wasn't obvious, if you're interested in cybersecurity, learn Linux. There are definitely people in the field that use Windows as their predominant system, but a lot of the systems that servers are hosted on use Linux. So if you're looking to defend Linux systems, it's worth learning how to use a Linux system. Likewise, if you want to attack a Linux system, you need to understand that as well. Speaking of Windows, don't just learn the newest Windows system out there. You might have Windows 10 version 1803 on your personal computer. But if you were trying to play with somebody else's network, be it a bank or a school or a large corporation, there's a very good chance that they're using Windows 7 or 8 or Vista or XP. It happens much more often than you might think. Learning how Windows actually works involves learning about the old versions of Windows as well. If you're at a school, most schools have either Spark or MSDN licenses, which allow you to download old versions of Windows. You can use these as valuable learning tools. If you are able to get a professional license, you can play with a lot of the local security suites that I mentioned before. This one's a bit generalized. Learn how your computer does the things it does. Understand what IP addresses are and learn how to change them. Look at your virtual memory, which is memory on your hard drive that lets you handle swapping. Switch out your video card and figure out what the internals of your computer do. If you have a laptop, I probably have to change that to change your own memory. But understanding the things inside of your computer are a great way toward understanding the things inside of other people's computers. This last one is a much bigger category than 4 words should be, but run a virtual machine. There are a million virtualization solutions that you can play with at home. Some more free than others, but a lot of them have ways to run them. Totally legal ways, obviously, in your own environment. VirtualBox, VMware Player, Zen. These are options so that you can run virtual computers inside of your current computer. Now, if you have a weak laptop that you bought at a Walmart, you might not be able to run many virtual machines at the same time. But if you have a stronger system, you can probably run, like I said, multiple Kali Linuxes, security onions, and Viatas at the same time and build an entire real network, using the Viatas to route around, the Kalis to talk to each other, and the security onions to monitor. Setting up this type of environment and understanding both what these things do and how they do them, and why they do them, is a huge step towards understanding cybersecurity. These are all just tips that you can use to get into the field. Once you're there, once you have these tools set up, the things you might do with them totally differ depending on the assignment or your goal. Wherever you work and whatever you do, you'll be using these types of tools in interesting and new ways all the time to try to solve things. Penetration testers don't know what they're going to go up against once they get there. They don't know what kind of defense a system has until they try probing it for the first time. So the more you understand these tools in your own environment, the better it'll work out when you do it for real, either in a CTF or in the cybersecurity profession. Try them out. Lots of great tutorials out there too. Lockheed Martin, as you know, is sponsoring the Cyber Connect talk, and it has a huge presence in the cyber world. As the slides say, there is a huge shortage of cleared cyber talent. We are working, as you can see right now, with academia and others to try to fix this. Cisco believes that there was 1 million unfilled cybersecurity positions just a few years back, and people estimate that it's only going to rise. 3.5 million cyber positions that should exist that won't have enough talent to fill them. That means that cybersecurity is a field where we are going to be looking for more and more real talent to fill the positions. Why look at Lockheed Martin? There are 1 million talented minds. Well, there are a lot of talented minds here. I haven't counted myself. There are probably millions of talented minds that have worked with Lockheed Martin at one point or another in the aerospace and defense industries, and now in the cyber industry in and outside of defense as well. We have disciplines here ranging from software, radio frequency, systems, and hardware engineers. And of course, we also have penetration testers, analysts, and cultural anthropologists. How does that relate to cyber, you may ask? Understanding a society helps figure out the sorts of things on its computer. Do you know how my documents is rendered in different countries? Do you know what you need to type in to hack into a computer in South America versus North America? Cultural anthropologists gather that sort of information and actually apply it towards the cyber field. We also have LM fellows. Fellows are people who have dedicated their career towards specific technical topics. We have over 20 of them in the cyber field alone. Some of them sitting just a few feet from me right now. I get to work with them on a daily basis. 2017, just a few years back, 28% of our external hires, that is to say people that started outside the company and came in, were veterans. We employ over 21,000 veterans. We are a very veteran-friendly company, and we invite any veterans to apply, and we'd love to have you. Likewise, Lockheed Martin has a cyber university to support your further development. We try to train employees in many certification areas, including Certified Ethical Hacker, Security Plus, and CISSP certifications, not to mention things like increasing your knowledge about Cisco systems, coding systems such as Python, Agile Scrum development, and so on. Lockheed Martin will try to put you through college if you need additional degrees as well, and it will support your personal development because in the end, your development helps Lockheed Martin, helps the country. I got my master's degree through Lockheed Martin paying for it, which was great. There's a million different organizations out there that Lockheed Martin's working with to try to develop and progress the STEM workforce. We have different programs here that serve different populations in the field already. We help with ethical hacking and coding contests with local middle schools and high schools. We support people's CTF efforts. We work towards the Girls Who Code cyber initiatives, and we have again, I used a million. We have many different bridge programs to help people that are coming from one discipline or another find their way into the cyber and engineering fields. We also support a broad array of other programs. We work with children. As I mentioned before, middle schoolers come to our facility here and do coding competitions, but we also have outreach into things like elementary schools so we can talk to them about what engineering is early on. We work with a lot of underrepresented fields. We handle sponsorships and partnerships and do recruiting events at universities and other places to try to find talent. We have internship and mentoring opportunities so that people that are still working on their degrees or working in their fields can try to learn more and migrate over to Lockheed Martin. And as I mentioned before, we are always investing in veteran and experienced worker programs. If any of these things sound interesting to you, I will certainly suggest you apply to Lockheed Martin. As Corey mentioned before, I've been here for over 10 years and I've loved the experience. Not just because it's let me talk to you guys right now. So, ask me anything. If you guys have any questions, I will watch the chat for a bit. That's a movie from Reddit, by the way. There's a famous Ask Me Anything about the movie Rampart. Not important. But if you have any questions about cyber, getting a job in the cyber realm, or general job-related questions, I'm here. If you guys type it, I'll do my best to answer it. And if not, I hope you've enjoyed. Corey, if you're on the line, you're more than welcome to add anything.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. That was, I've actually was privy to hear this talk before, and I think I learned something new again on this one. So really appreciate that. Looks like we do have somebody typing in the question bar, but yeah, you guys feel free to ask questions for the next couple minutes, and then Daniel can answer them, and then we'll move on from there. Looks like a couple just came in.
Hello there. So, first question I see, what job titles does someone looking into cybersecurity apply to? Software engineering and systems engineering are the two main ones. Especially at the facility I happen to be sitting in, those are the job titles that you would generally have inside of that field. Some other companies, either different parts of Lockheed Martin or other companies, call those cyber engineers or cyber info engineers or information technology engineers. There's a lot of different names. But yes, if you start with software engineering or systems engineering, you'll be able to find those positions. What I suggest you do is after you've searched for that, continue filtering by looking for the name cyber inside of the descriptions. We have people here that are software engineers, but the specific job requirements and job responsibilities have cyber built right in. For instance, while I'm a software engineer, I do cyber on a daily basis, so my job description would involve some of those white team responsibilities I spoke about before. Let's see. What is the difference between cybersecurity and information assurance? Cybersecurity is the name of the overarching field. Cybersecurity can include all the things I spoke about, but I generally like to group it into the red, white, and blue spaces: attack, defense, and infrastructure. It's always important to have that white team. They're the people that support everyone else, and you want those kind of people in your party. Information assurance is a more specialized version. If I had to group information assurance into one of those colors, I would say blue. People that do information assurance are protecting your data, setting up your network, and making sure that your data is well archived. While there is definitely an overlap between IA and cybersecurity, there are IA jobs that are divorced from the cybersecurity field, because you could have an IA job at a bank protecting data without a specific mind towards the protection of that data from the cyber realm. If your bank, for example, was somehow not connected to the internet, you'd still have an information assurance expert to protect the data integrity, even if you were somehow not worried about people coming over the internet or another cyber access way to steal that data. Is there a link to Cyber University? I can let Corey answer that if there's something else. I believe that Cyber University is an internal effort. If you were at Lockheed Martin, you could look on our internal networks to find out more about Cyber University. If you're outside of Lockheed Martin, you'd probably have to apply and look your way inside. But once you're here, on our internal networks, just look up Cyber University and you can try to get more training. Spots are, of course, limited, but we are happy to try to train new people up in the cyber realm. Are there any opportunities for international students in LM related to cybersecurity? You have to apply to find out. There are different positions all the time that require different amounts of clearance, for example. If you don't know, clearance is a country-by-country guideline of saying, here are the things that we'd like you to work on, and here's the trust, quote-unquote, that we need to have in the individual before they can do the work. There's absolutely uncleared cyber work. And likewise, there is absolutely cleared cyber work that requires you to be a citizen or have knowledge of a certain country. So if you look for jobs, make sure that you look for those jobs that have the correct types of country clearances that apply to you. I definitely am not going to speak for the entire industry. I have seen more cleared jobs than uncleared jobs, but both do exist. What recommendations do you have for those of us transitioning out of active duty who don't have the hands-on experience you are generally looking for, but rather management and leadership roles? I recommend the things I was saying in this presentation, to be honest. If you're coming out of active duty and you'd like to get into the cyber field, but you have management and leadership experience, that's extremely helpful to us. We need people that are good leaders, absolutely, to manage the teams doing the cyber work. Similar to a CEO switching companies, a leader that's good in one industry is generally a good leader in another. But it is helpful to have a lot of localized knowledge. Look into a lot of the things I put into this presentation. Look into Kali, look into Vios, look into Security Onion, and understand what the dangers are in the cyber industry. Read newsletters, read websites, check Reddit and Slashdot, and find out what the dangers are out there. The more you understand about the cyber field, the better. If you're worried that your resume wouldn't be able to get you in to a cyber job, you can also look for a certification. CEH, which is Certified Ethical Hacker, and Security Plus are two of the ones that I see a lot of people looking for. If you don't believe that your degree or qualifications alone can help you, I think those certs are a good bridge. Let's see. Is there a significant overlap between cybersecurity and SIGINT and ELENT? I apologize, I don't know enough about that to help. I definitely know that there is SIGINT overlap, not through all of cybersecurity, but some of it. Understanding how and why transmissions happen is a huge part of cybersecurity, but it's a little more localized to the type of networking I was describing before. And I couldn't tell you anything about ELENT, I apologize. Let's see. If you come in with a cyber degree and a bit of experience, where should you look to begin your career with Lockheed Martin? If you come in with a degree, like say a college degree or a degree through the military, for example, and a bit of experience, where should you look to begin your career with Lockheed Martin? LockheedMartinJobs.com is a great way to come from the outside world in. If you already work here, there are avenues to say, I'm looking for a new opportunity. But if you're coming from the outside world, LockheedMartinJobs.com. Place where you work, or where you'd like to work, into the field and search for a couple keywords, and you can find out that way. Like I mentioned before, software engineer or systems engineer often have jobs inside of there that include cyber security. Personally, I work in Orlando, Florida, and there are cyber-related jobs here. But we are definitely not the only ones at Lockheed Martin, nor in the rest of the industry. If you come in with a little bit of experience, or no experience and just a degree, we generally call those jobs level 1 or level 2 jobs. I recommend you come in looking for that sort of either associate or engineer type work. But regardless, when you look at the job postings on LockheedMartinJobs.com, it'll tell you what the expected minimums are, and we definitely welcome you to apply. Apply to something even if you think you're not 100% matching to that qualification, because there are definitely avenues out there where your experience in one field will influence the experience in another. If you have 10 years working, doing signals work, and 2 years in cyber, that signals work might be able to translate to something more in the cyber realm than you realize. So feel free to apply. People are looking at resumes all the time and trying to find great talent. Let's see. I will say that a lot of people said thank you, and you're more than welcome. I'm always happy to have opportunities to talk to people like this. It's not a question, though. So all I can say is you're welcome. I can't answer it more than that. We have a community called Military Connect at Lockheed Martin. That is true. Just like the Cyber Connect right here, we have Military Connect. It works with people transitioning from the military. It should help people that are transitioning find jobs at Lockheed Martin and translate their skills. And there's a link in the chat to that Connect. I have no personal experience with Military Connect as I am not a prior service member, but I know a lot of prior service members that I work with, and they have found great ways to transition their previous experience into the commercial and professional realm. Lockheed Martin is a government contractor, so while some things are different, we do share a lot of the same customers as a lot of our service members. So far, they've had a good time acclimating over. It is 2:52. I can certainly take a couple more questions if you guys have them.
Okay, it looks like we'll give them a few more minutes, but I want to thank Marvin for putting that link in there and for mentioning the Military Connect is one of our kind of the pilot community before engineering and Cyber Connect. So that's really great for people transitioning from military into cyber roles. Daniel, I want to thank you again for doing this tech talk. This was really informative. I really think this is a great benefit to our Cyber Connect and Engineering Connect members, and looking forward to getting it up in the community and having even more eyeballs on it. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to do this.
Anytime, glad to do so.
Great, then with that, we'll wrap things up a few minutes early here. And just again, this will be available within the community in the coming weeks. And great thanks to Daniel and RMS and everyone who participated in the call today. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good day, everybody.